Nerd Night number 61, MRI Magic, Proton Power, and Why We Play Video Games.
I am Mark Kazmierski. I am a graduate of Central Michigan University with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. But more important to the point tonight, I am a gaming enthusiast who not only loves playing games, but I love to read about them, learn about them, everything, talk about it with people, watch other people play. So a quick story about me. When I moved into the house that I spent most of my life in, I was about 3 or 4, and I was too afraid to go into the basement. So my parents moved my Nintendo down there, and I was over in about 10 minutes. So why do we play games? Now, when I ask this question, there's always inevitably someone who's going to chime in and go, because they're fun. So to that person, I say, thank you, Captain Obvious. I appreciate you showing up tonight. But to dig a little deeper, I'm talking about the psychology of why we play games. And I really wish I'd actually named this presentation that. But the reason that we play them is because they give us 3 core needs that, when satisfied, allow us to achieve our optimal function and growth. And those are competency, autonomy, and relatedness. So what I'm going to do is just kind of give a breakdown of each one. What games sort of have it and why, and then also a breakdown of how you get them in real life and what happens when games don't really achieve this. So competency is the first one. I've got a nice picture of Tetris here. Who here's played Tetris? Okay, yeah, I figured most of you. So Tetris is a great example of competency. It starts, pretty slow. You can learn the basics, and then as you play, it gets faster and faster, challenging you as you go along. And I had to write this down because I keep forgetting it. According to the Motivational Pull of Video Games, a self-determination theory approach, which is the paper that I based a lot of this on, competency is defined as a need for challenge and feelings of effectiveness. So basically, we want to feel achievements for playing well and doing well, and also feel challenged along the way. So another game right here. Who's played this one? Okay, yeah. Slightly less, but that's fine. This is Donkey Kong. Another game gets more challenging as you go, and you get rewarded along the way. And eventually you can beat the game, and then it just starts over harder. So some games that evoke competency, this will be your platform games, your puzzle games, fighting games, people who play first-person shooters, and many more. This is by no means a complete list. This is just some of the few major examples. So when you get competency in the real world, you're going to see this when you get your promotions at your job. You're going to see this, obviously, when you get good grades in school. Winning at a sporting event is another example. And even on a psychological level, the dopamine reward you can get for doing a good deed can count as that as well. So when games don't make us feel competency, there's a certain emotion we feel. I don't know if you're getting it, given the vibes. I wish I'd actually included a picture of someone getting bored, because that's another example. But when we don't really know where to go in a game, when we're walking around like, okay, what am I supposed to do next, And I feel like that's a big question for a lot of people who never really picked up a game before, and you hand them a controller and they're like, what do I do? So, and the same goes for not receiving any rewards for when you actually do accomplish something. And when games are too challenging, this can kind of go back to no direction for how to proceed. If the game's too hard, you're probably going to put the controller down and be like, it's not for me. Yeah. And it's also when it's too easy. If you're a seasoned gamer, someone who's been playing for years, and someone hands you a game that pretty much just holds your hand the whole way, you're not really going to feel that invested in it. So next one I wanted to talk about is autonomy. This is from a game called Portal, which is very funny. But according to that research paper, this is a sense of volition or willingness when doing a task. So you want to feel like your choices matter. You want to feel like if you make a decision, it's going to have an outcome it's going to have some sort of outcome. So when it comes down to it, what really autonomy is about is freedom. So I got a few games here that I wanted to talk about that I think do a good job of showing off autonomy. And so this is your open world adventure games. Let me not move away from the mic. On the top one is a game called Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's a huge game, and when you start off, you're in a tutorial level that's still pretty huge. And then once you beat that tutorial, there's nothing stopping you from just going anywhere you want. You can march right up to the final boss. I mean, you'll probably lose, but you can do it. And another good example here are these choice-based narrative games. On the bottom here, you've got Mass Effect that uses these dialogue trees, and I was hoping that would be less blurry on the screen, but you pick how you want what you want your character to say, and then the story changes based on the decisions that you choose, and you can get different endings. And as always, many more. Pretty much every game is going to have some type of these three things, but some exemplify it more than others. So when it comes to autonomy in the real world, thankfully we live in a very free society, and so you get to pick, what do you want to do for the day? What do you want to eat? How do you want to pass the time? Who do you want to spend time with? And so we actually get a pretty good amount of autonomy just in our daily lives in little micro amounts, but sometimes we don't get enough. You can choose what you want to do with your life, but if you feel trapped in the job you're doing or the degree you're in, you sometimes feel like you can't get out. But you do have the option to change your situation when you're not happy, which is another good dose of autonomy for you. So I just like this poster. It doesn't really have anything to do with video games, but it does work with autonomy. And just the idea of choices is important here. So when games don't make us feel autonomy, this is going to come down to when you feel like your choices are limited. When a game's like, well, go do this. And you're like, okay, well, all right, I'll do that. And it's like, now go do this. And you're kind of just being taken on a tour at Disney World. Doesn't really give you that feeling that you're looking for when you're playing this. When you feel like your decisions don't matter, and also being locked into activities you don't want to do. If you're someone who's been playing games for years and a tutorial is trying to tell you how to walk, you're going to get fed up pretty quick. With all this, it doesn't mean that linear games can't be autonomous. The way I break it down is that a train can actually take you down a track, and a train would be an example of a bad linear game. Pretty much you're locked on, you go where it tells you to go. A better example would be more like a river with a boat on it. You can steer, you can go left and right, and if you work really hard, you can paddle upstream, but the river will guide you where you need to go. So, real quick, just touching on autonomy with the choices not mattering here, I wanted to talk about this situation. If you have a game and you're like, wow, look, we have choices, you can change things, but they lead to the same outcome, you're not going to really get a result of the player feeling autonomous, and this includes even if you add more choices, the end result's going to be the same. So a really good autonomous game would look more like this, which if any of you who here's seen Netflix's Bandersnatch? Okay, yeah. Excellent discussion on the idea of autonomy. If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. I would check it out. But this kind of thing is great for the player, but it can make the developers go a little nuts. So the last thing I want to talk about is relatedness, and this one is a big one. So it's experienced when a person feels connected with others, and this can go with both real and artificial examples. If you're interacting with people online, or you're interacting with well-developed characters in a game, you can get the feelings from both. So games with relatedness, your role-playing games, online games, and adventure games with emphasis on dialogue decisions, and as always, many more. Two examples right here. This is the Walking Dead game, Telltale's The Walking Dead, and the entire game is based around your relationship with this girl, Clementine, and you may actually make decisions, and she serves as sort of your moral compass. And so the developers really worked hard to make you empathize with her and help her influence your decisions along the way. But you completely don't have to listen to that, so that's autonomy right there. And then another example here is a game called Stardew Valley. And in this game, this is more many micro relationships. You can build friendships with every single villager in the town that you move into. You can even get married to a few of them. Yeah. But that's a good way of building that relationship. And these are good for people who are a bit socially awkward. They don't have trouble connecting with people in the real world. These can at least fill in that gap for them. So when it comes to relatedness in the real world, I don't think I need to break it down too much. We're social creatures. We like to be out. We like to interact with people. Even those people who say they don't like people interact with people on some level, because someone has to bring you your pizza. So when you don't feel relatedness, this is going to be when you find it difficult to connect with your characters. When you're not feeling welcomed in an online community that can ostracize people and make them just not feel like they're connected to anything. And even when you have characters that the players can connect with, if their presence isn't felt by those characters, they're just going to feel like they're talking at a wall. So now I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent, but I promise you I'll bring it back. I want to take you on a little history lesson here. You don't have to close your eyes, but just picture it's 1983, and video games have been out for a few years, but they haven't been doing so well. A lot of companies are just throwing out games and being like, yeah, make it, it's fine. We don't know anything about making games, but sell it. And so one of the big ones was E.T., and it actually is responsible for causing the 1983 video game crash, the entire market bottom out, and people just weren't interested in buying video games anymore. And so what that actually resulted in is the market was dead for about 2 years, and then a Japanese company, you might have heard of them, they're called Nintendo, they came along and said, okay, well, we have this Nintendo Entertainment System, and we want to sell it. But retailers went, no one wants video games anymore. And so they said, okay, well, we need to figure out how to sell this thing. What do we do differently? So they got an idea, and they thought most stores, or most video game retailers in the past have sold it in the electronics aisle. That didn't work. So what do we do differently this time? And they said, okay, we're going to sell it in the toy aisle instead. And retailers said, okay, yeah, if it's a toy, yeah, we'll sell it, that's great. But it caused a different problem, because if you've been to a toy store in the past 30 years, some are changing, but most of them look like this. And because of that, Nintendo had to make a decision. Which side of the shelf do we want to put this on? Okay, over here. And because of that, video games had a reputation after this of being a boy fad. Now, at this point, I had some videos to play, but we found out they don't work. So if I just pull them up on my phone and you guys want to huddle around, never mind. I'll just tell you what they were. The first was a commercial from the game Zelda Ocarina of Time. And in that commercial, it had little text that would flash up interspersed with the gameplay, and it would say, will you sink or swim? Will you fight or flee? And then in the end it said, and in the end, will you get the girl or play like one? Yeah, it's not going to fly in 2019. So I was showing that, and then I had another video ad today that was much more inclusive. My point is that there is a large number of people, women, who feel like gaming is not for them. It's a boy thing, but games are for everyone. Anyone who has a brain has a need for these psychological core values, and you can get them from video games just as much as boys can. So now I want to talk about, I've been talking about all these great things, I want to talk about some downsides. And the important thing is that while gaming can help fill these core needs when you don't have them in your daily life, the important thing to remember is that these are just illusions, and while it can make you feel better and help you in the short term, in the long term, true happiness is found out in the real world. So I wanted to include this quote from Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. And if you aren't familiar with the book, it takes place in 2045. The entire world lives their life in this online virtual reality called the Oasis. And the guy who creates it actually has this quote here, and the bottom part is what's important. He says, "That was when I realized, as terrifying and as painful as reality can be, it's also the only place where you can find true happiness, because reality is real." And so it sums up my point, is what I'm trying to say, is that while it's good to use games to fill in these gaps for yourself and keep yourself happy and sane as you move through life, you're not going to find true happiness in the games, and it's important to remember that and keep living your life. So for my conclusion, I like to call it the final level. Just a quick wrap up of what we talked about. You get 3 core needs that are fulfilled through gaming, and we use gaming to fill the gaps left by our daily lives. And games can give us the illusion of true fulfillment, but they can't replace the real thing. So I think that's all I got, but I don't think it's right to finish the final level without killing the boss, so. Thank you so much.
This program was recorded on January 17th, 2019 at Live 102 South 1st Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan.